hell he's talking about. What am I doing here?
My mind's going blank now. Where am I headed? I keep forgetting I'm president. Where am I?
No idea. I don't think as the idea that the political coverage of
I want to thank and recognize Dr. John Kingersong. Good song.
I can't get this to function at all.
My mind's going blank now.
What's happening?
I can't remember. I lose track. My mind's going blank now.
What are you talking about?
What the hell's going on here? Where the hell are you? My mind's going blank now. I can't remember.
I don't know what the hell he's talking about. What am I doing here?
My mind's going blank now. Where am I headed? I keep forgetting I'm president. Where am I?
No idea. No idea. No idea. No idea.
What's the song that is played where everybody is on the chair, everybody going to my mind's going blank now.
What's happening?
I can't remember. I'm gonna lose track. My mind's going blank now.
What are you talking about?
What the hell's going on here? Where the hell are you? My mind's going blank now. I can't remember.
I don't know what the hell he's talking about. What am I doing here?
My mind's going blank now. Where am I headed? I keep forgetting I'm president. Where am I?
No idea.
Last night on the television, I was on a telephone rapidly rising with I don't know. COVID has taken more than 100 years. Look, here's why it's reflected in the NHEI. America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was going to put him in the we're going to seize the ill-begotten gains of Putin's kleptocracy.
Yeah.
NATO's purpose is to defend against aggression. Let me make that near and dear to you that you like to be able to. Anyway, my mind's going blank now.
What's happening?
I can't remember. I'm gonna lose track. My mind's going blank now.
What are you talking about?
What the hell's going on here? Where the hell are you? My mind's going blank now. I can't remember.
I don't know what the hell he's talking about. What am I doing here?
My mind's going.
Sorry, I was on mute. All right. Well, thank you guys very much. Be a little bit of a shorter show tonight. I had a bunch of dental work done, so I'm going to be a little sore once this Novocaine wears off. But we got a lot to talk about. The first thing is going to be what the GOP should make their first order of business in once the new Congress comes in, because it's not going to be what you expect. I'm going to tell you why that is true. We're going to talk a little bit about the FTX scandal. I'll explain it a little bit. And then talk about why we're not having as much fallout. I mean, it's kind of crazy that this guy is still not arrested. So we'll talk about that. We're going to talk about what's going on in Maricopa County and in Arizona in the governor's race, and why that race, what happens there. Well, what happened there and what happened in other states really is bad news for Republicans, regardless if it's Ron DeSantis, if it's Donald Trump, if it's Mike Pence, whoever the heck it is. Why the Republican candidate for president is in deep trouble in 2024 because an electoral map is shifting. There's just not much wiggle room right now. Those were two states that Republicans really needed to get election integrity in check. They failed to Pennsylvania being the second. They failed to win the governorship in each one of those states. This is going to have dramatic effects on the 2024 race. That's why it never made sense to me that the Republican Governors Association was so against investing in Doug Mastriano, even if you didn't like Doug Mastriano. The reasons, obviously, for not liking Mastriano was his loyalty to Trump and his crusade against voting irregularities after the 2020 election. Even if you didn't like him, you still needed to invest in that race because you need Pennsylvania in 2024. The Republicans have such a smaller pathway to 270 now than ever before, especially with Georgia. I mean, so there's three states really now that Republicans are going to have to count on, because if Pennsylvania and Arizona are off the board, which it appears they're going to be because of everything that's going on, there's going to be trouble, right? Because Nevada is probably off the board. They just instituted an open primary, ranked choice voting. Obviously, that doesn't affect the presidential race, but Nevada is another state where there's a lot of stuff that goes on. We saw that with the Adam Laxalt race. So Republicans basically have 3 states they need to win now. Without Arizona and Pennsylvania, Republicans have no path to 270 unless they sweep Georgia, Michigan, and Wisconsin. And that's extremely difficult. There's only been one Republican who's won Michigan and Wisconsin in decades, and that was Donald Trump in 2016. So we're going to talk about that. We'll talk a little bit first, too, before I get into the Hunter Biden stuff and what the GOP's first order of business should be. Man, I just want to say something about all these people that are already on the DeSantis train. Listen, I understand there's some people that now support Ron, think it's time to move on from Trump for whatever reason. Trump's too divisive, this and that. But these DeSantis people are very aggressive and have decided that basically anybody who's still loyal to the former president is an enemy and needs to be ruthlessly mocked and criticized. And, to me, I hold no animosity towards people who are supporting Ron DeSantis. All I can simply say is congressional voting records are public record. They're very easy to look up. You should study how he voted in the House. And then you also have to follow the money. Ken Griffin is not funding Ron DeSantis because he wants Ron to take on China. Ken Griffin wants to take over the Chinese market. So, you could deny these things all you want, but it is the truth. And you have to look at both sides again and stop feeding into this narrative that Trump can't win, so we have to pick someone else. You need to make your own choice based on what you actually believe. Stop thinking with emotion, look at the facts, and then decide who you want to support. Because just because you disagree with the facts doesn't mean they're not the facts. And, obviously it's clear that the DeSantis people are going to hit Trump on lockdowns. They're going to hit Trump on the vaccine. But to me, that's disingenuous. You're rewriting the past. You're rewriting history. For instance, I just had an argument about the lockdowns. Trump did push lockdowns, but Donald Trump was also one of the first national figures in the country to oppose lockdowns. Brian Kemp was probably the first, and Trump did criticize Kemp for opening up Georgia, but very shortly after that, Trump flipped and was pushing for reopenings. Every candidate who will be running against Trump in 2024 was also in support of lockdowns or locked down their state, and did not speak up before Donald Trump. So to punish him on lockdowns is disingenuous because it's trying to pretend that the reality of the past is different than it actually is. So Republicans are likely to have 221, 222 seats in the House. Very slim majority. I believe a 5th Republican came out today. They have 5 Republicans now. Kevin's grip on the speakership is not set in stone. If you have 221 members, right, you need 218 for majority, 5 votes. That means Kevin doesn't have the votes to become speaker. And, I don't know what Kevin has promised Marjorie Taylor Greene. I like Marjorie, but I disagree with her vehemently on this. Her argument is that we have to support Kevin because if we're not united, Democrats or Republicans, 50 Republicans are going to vote for a moderate Democrat speaker like Steny Hoyer or someone like that. That's not true. What's going to happen is the same thing that happened in 2016 when Donald Trump won. Then Kevin McCarthy was set to become Speaker of the House. There he is, good old Kevin. He was back in 2016. He didn't have the votes. The Freedom Caucus said, we're not voting for Kevin McCarthy. So Republicans knew before they went into the vote, the official vote, because the vote that happened before is the Republican, it means nothing. So that it means nothing. It's just Republicans voted. And Kevin didn't even get 200 votes of his own caucus. So there is no way Republicans are going to go into a vote in January knowing that Kevin McCarthy does not have the votes needed to be speaker and put him up there. If they realize he's not going to get those votes, they're going to have to meet and they're going to have to compromise on a candidate. In 2016, the Freedom Caucus said, we're not going to support Kevin. And they eventually had to figure out who they were going to put forward. And we got Paul Ryan. So, but that situation would happen again. So this idea that Kevin is going to be nominated and voted on no matter what is not true. They're not going to hold the vote knowing Kevin doesn't have the votes. So, that being said, McCarthy, a lot of Republicans had a press conference this week talking about Hunter Biden, putting Hunter Biden in the crosshairs. They clearly want to make Hunter Biden investigations of Joe Biden's dealings a very important part of the next Congress. I do too. Nobody, if you know me, wants Hunter Biden to face justice more than me. But I'm going to tell you a little bit about why I don't think should be the focus point. Because Democrats are going to use it against them in 2024. And right now, based on the results of the 2020 election, the 2024 election is extremely important for the future of this country. And you cannot give Democrats an opportunity to flip the script and seize the narrative and let the media run with it. But first, all of a sudden, the Hunter Biden laptop story is real. And there's a reason they're doing this too, which I'll talk about once I show the video clip. But CBS News, 2 years later, we've all known for 2 years that the Hunter Biden laptop was real. Do you remember those 50 national security experts who told us it was Russian disinformation? Clapper, Brennan, McCabe, all those people. They knew it wasn't, but they signed that letter, lied to the American people, influenced an election, let the mainstream media discredit anybody who said that it was not Russian disinformation. But now CBS News finally says, oh, look, the Hunter Biden laptop's real. Let's hear a little clip of what CBS News had to report on.
And as Republicans take control of the House, Hunter Biden, the president's son, will be a target for investigations. And that means data from a laptop reported to belong to Biden could be crucial to the investigatory process. CBS News has obtained its data not through a third party or political operative, but directly from the source who told us they provided it to the FBI under subpoena. And we commissioned an independent forensic review to determine its authenticity. Senior investigative correspondent Catherine Harridge joins us now with what we found. Catherine, I'm very interested. Good morning.
Good morning, Tony. These House Republican investigations are coming, and that could be a challenge for the White House as we head into 2023 and 2024. The laptop data we had analyzed showed no evidence it was faked or tampered with.
Oh, wow.
Digital forensic investigator Mark Lanterman was previously a member of a Secret Service electronic crimes task force.
There was one thing that got my attention, and that was a voicemail.
It's Dad. I called to tell you I love you. I love you more than the whole world, pal. Could I get some help?
That voicemail, apparently from Joe Biden during his son Hunter's drug addiction, is one of many findings Lanterman used to authenticate what is believed to be Hunter Biden's laptop data.
You're confident, based on your analysis, this is Hunter Biden's data and that it's real?
Yes.
This Delaware computer shop.
So, all of a sudden, they now are like, wait a minute, this laptop was real. They could have gotten the laptop hard drive copies 2 years ago because the man who turned him into the FBI gave copies to other people. So people have seen these contents for 2 years now, knowing it was real. CBS and the rest of the mainstream media didn't want to see the evidence for themselves because they didn't want to admit it was real, because then they would have to justify telling the public to vote for somebody after knowing what they saw on that hard drive. Because I have seen some of the stuff on that hard drive. A lot of it was leaked online, and it is disturbing stuff. And these people told you that decency was back in the White House after Joe Biden won. Let me tell you, that couldn't be further from the truth. What is on that hard drive is disturbing, and Richard Nixon is off somewhere rolling over in his grave, because if Joe and Hunter Biden were ever fully investigated in a nonpartisan manner, black and white, just looking at the crimes for the things that they've done, and the real truth was uncovered, everything they've done makes Watergate looks like a joke. And this is the problem in this country, the two-tiered system of justice. So House Republicans now get their chance. They have subpoena power when they take over. I'm doing good, Dar Snyder. How are you? So House Republicans have their chance now to finally get some answers regarding Joe and Hunter Biden. However, I am going to argue, which will be unpopular with some, that they should not make it their primary focus over the next 2 years. Why? First reason is the 2024 election is going to be incredibly important. We did not get the type of red wave that we were hoping. We did not take both chambers. We're going to have a slim as heck majority in the House. We do not have the Senate, and we don't have the White House, obviously. We need to win in 2024. And right now, the most unfortunate part, which I felt about the election, Machiavelli, hear what I'm going to say, and then tell me what you think about how I'm going to argue this. So, the most unfortunate thing about the election is we haven't seen the peak of the economic turmoil yet. 2023, Goldman Sachs just said today that the market is in for another big drop. Companies, FedEx is laying off 10,000 workers right before the holiday season. Other companies have been laying off workers. There's layoffs announcements coming every day. We have not seen the bulk of the economic turmoil yet. And it's unfortunate that people voted based on false pretenses, because you have a government right now, the Fed, Janet Yellen, Joe Biden, they're knowingly lying to the American people. They lied to the American people throughout the election leading up to the midterms about the true state of the economy. They know that we were probably already in a recession and that a recession is going to happen. But they lied to the American people, told them inflation's going down. The CPI went down because energy costs went down, but everything else is still going up. Food and grocery prices are through the roof. So people voted, and we haven't seen the worst of it yet. And if Republicans in the House spend the next 2 years focusing solely on Joe Biden and not trying to address or bring attention to the cost of living crisis, Democrats are going to flip it back on them in 2024, and the media is going to parrot the Democrats' narrative. And we know that Republicans have a difficult time shooting it back to them. Instead of taking the issue head on, they let the Democrats and the media control the narratives because they don't like to fight. They don't like to have those tough conversations. Now, and you have to understand this. Many people don't realize how our government actually runs. So the Democrats are going to run with the narrative in 2024. Look, the Republicans in the House, you gave them control of the House. All they did for 2 years was investigate Joe and Hunter Biden. They didn't do anything to stop inflation, to bring down the cost of living. That's what Democrats are going to say. The media is going to parrot it, and millions are going to believe it because many don't realize that because we don't control the Senate, because we don't control the White House, there's very little we can actually do in terms of policy, because even if we can get it past the Senate, a 51 or 50 seat Senate, highly unlikely, but if we could, it's going to get vetoed by Joe Biden. Now, Republicans could get things done if they grew a big backbone and they threatened to withhold funding the government until they got things done. So, but you have to show people that you're going to try, because that way in 2024, we do have many misinformed voters. Listen, I was a teacher. I taught history. I taught civics. Many people, you're right, Darth Snyder, many people don't realize how the government runs. It's not even their own fault. They weren't taught it. Civics used to be taught, and every student used to know civics. And now most people have no idea how our government works. So they listen to the news because, there's this sense that news anchors and journalists and these people, they wouldn't lie to me, right? They're respectable people. So they take them at their word. If Republicans do nothing to address these costs, because people vote with their pocketbook. Let me just tell you, people vote with their pocketbook. 2023 is going to be a bloodbath for the economy. The Democrats are going to run with this. Hey, all they did was go after Joe and Hunter Biden. That's all they cared about. And the media is going to parrot that, and many are going to fall for it. Republicans need to focus on inflation and the cost of living, passing bills, proposing policy ideas, even if it gets killed in the Senate or vetoed by Biden. Then you have the chance to flip the script on the narrative. You could say, well, wait a minute. We did pass bills aimed to reduce inflation, aimed to lower the cost of living, but you guys vetoed it. Yeah, so you have to be, but you have to actually do it. Darth Snyder. So this is the problem. You actually have to do it. You can't just say, well, we knew it wouldn't pass. That's not a good enough answer. If the Democrats wanted this way, you're taking away one of the biggest arguments. You could already see it. The first thing after the press conference, the Republican press conference where they said they were going to go after Joe and Hunter Biden, Democrats were all over Twitter. KJP was at the podium in the White House brief room saying, oh, look, they're not going to do anything. Millions are suffering, and all they care about is political persecutions. So the Democrats are already gearing it up. The media is already parroting that. You have to take that away from them. I want Joe and Hunter to face justice. But the sad reality of the situation we're in right now is even if Republicans investigate these people, nothing's going to happen right now. We're going to have a bunch of hearings. You're going to get a bunch of clips that you can send in your fundraising emails, but they aren't going to be held accountable, right? Not with Christopher Wray at the FBI, not with Merrick Garland at the DOJ. If you think those two individuals are going to follow the evidence and go wherever it leads them, you're lying to yourself. It's just going to be a show. And the media is going to discount whatever revelations the Republicans come up with during their investigation. They're going to say this is partisan. This is just partisan stuff, right? And Garland isn't going to do it. So if Republicans, what they need to do is they should be going after Garland. Because the biggest problem they have here is Merrick Garland. Merrick Garland controls the DOJ, who's getting charged, investigations, special counsels. That's all his decision. So why haven't Republicans gone after him? Why are they zeroing in on Hunter? First, you got to get rid of Garland and Chris Wray. You know why? Because 20 Republican senators voted to confirm Merrick Garland. Mitch McConnell recommended Merrick Garland to be hired as head of the FBI after James Comey was fired. They have no intention of taking out Merrick Garland. How many Republican electeds in the House and Senate were out there criticizing Merrick Garland for this witch hunt 3.0 that they're doing against Trump for this new special counsel? Very few. I saw maybe 3. The usual suspects criticized him, but no one else. There's a lot of people atop the Republican brass that want Trump gone. And so the uniparty is real. DC, this is what people don't understand. This is one of the reasons, a lot of people do understand it. I don't want to sound like I'm demeaning anyone, but it is real. DC functions and thrives on the status quo. Both parties make a lot of money, raise a lot of money off not actually dealing with issues. And so when candidates like myself, like Joe Kent, like Donald Trump in 2016, like Sabatini, when candidates come forward and they say, I don't care about the status quo. My goal is to go to DC and break the status quo. I'm going to vote based on what's right. When they hear things like that, both sides conspire to get rid of those people because they make money on the status quo. They continue to get elected on the status quo. They don't want the status quo to end. It's a game to them. But to me, people's lives are not a game. The water crisis in California is not a game. It hasn't been dealt with because both sides use it as a campaign issue. So Republicans have to be smarter. They have to think ahead. And right now, the Democrats are already planting the seeds that we're just going to tell them that, look, you gave the Republicans, because Americans gave Republicans, they said, I need to give you a chance. We had many quotes from voters that said, well, I'm going to vote for the GOP because I can't pay my bills. So if we go the next 2 years without Republicans trying to pass legislation and making the cost of living crisis and inflation the focus of their agenda, that is going to be used against them. And the American people are going to say, they're right. What did you do to stop inflation? Because once again, unfortunately, a lot of people don't understand that there's really not anything the House can do unless they get senators on board and unless Joe Biden doesn't veto it. So, but the narrative war is so important. So much is lost. So many races and elections are lost on the narrative war, not the facts, not the truth, but on the narrative war that's going on in the media. And too often Republicans lose that narrative war because they don't want to tackle things head on. They don't want to stand up to the media and explain their reasons. Why do you think they went after Kari Lake so hard? in Arizona because Kari Lake gave it back to them. Exactly. No spending bills until you pass these things. Thank you for saying that, Darth Snyder. The Republicans could have done something in the first 2 years of Biden's agenda. They can shut down the government and say, we are going to refuse to fund the government until you get rid of Merrick Garland, until you get rid of Mayorkas, until you fire Anthony Fauci. They could have done all of that. Why don't they? Because they're scared of the blowback, because they know the media is going to say, look, the Republicans shut down the government. It's time to stop with that nonsense. You got to fight fire with fire. Refuse to fund the government until Merrick Garland Joe Biden fires Merrick Garland or he's impeached. Refuse to fund the government until Mayorkas is gone. Refuse to fund the government until inflation and the cost of living is dealt with. Refuse to fund the government until Ukraine aid stops. Republicans can do all of those things with the minority. They can actually have a minority in both houses and do those things, but they don't because they don't want to fight. And that's why they were so terrified of Trump and Lake, because they were different types of Republicans. These people said, the hell with that. I'm here to get things done for the American people. I don't care about the status quo. I don't want to be in the good old boys club. I'm here to get results and deliver on an agenda. So that's the reason why I think they need to pivot fast, because the Democrats have already laid the foundation. And speaking of moving fast in the wrong direction would be what's going on with FTX. Now, I don't know how many people have been following. FTX was a cryptocurrency trading platform. It's kind of like Coinbase, where you have a wallet. So you go in, you put your money in this platform, and you can buy coins. They also had their own coin, FTT token, which ironically was worthless. That's where they put all of their money. It ended up being worthless. So what's basically happened here is we had a bank run. So this company was headed by these two wonderful people right here, Sam Bankman, I can't say his name, Sam and Caroline Ellison, Sam Bankman-Fried. And these basically swindled everybody. They took everybody's money. So a lot of people don't understand when you give your money to a bank, right? So the bank doesn't keep your money there. The bank takes your money, they invest it. That's how they make money. They're counting on the fact that not everybody's going to come at one time and say, hey, I want to get my money out. What happened here was a good old-fashioned bank run, right? So, and FTX kind of caused it themselves, because FTX went after one of their biggest competitors, which was Binance, right? Sam was trying to take out Binance, and he was, playing things behind the scenes. And then what Binance did was they owned a ton of FTT tokens, which was the FTX cryptocurrency that FTX basically made out of thin air. It's totally worthless. It meant nothing. It was backed by nothing. But the fact that people thought FTX was worth $80 billion. Turns out these two took all the money, the people's money that were on FTX platforms, and were blowing it on everything, blowing it on real estate in the Bahamas. They bet $700 million for Trump to lose the election in 2024. They blew everybody's money. And then Binance sold all of their shares in FTT, and it scared people, right? Because when there's a big sale of a stock or anything, it scares other investors. And then other investors say, well, wait a minute, I want to take my money out. This is what happened in 1928 during the stock market crash. There was no FDIC insurance. So what happened during the stock market crash, Black Friday, all these things, stock market started going down in the late 1920s. People started getting spooked. Happened during the housing crisis. People get scared. They pull their money out. Now, if everybody pulls their money out at once, the bank doesn't have the money to give to everybody, and the bank fails, because you go there and you say, I want my $10,000, give it to me. It's not like they can go in the back and get it. They've invested it in a lot of things. Then if the whole market starts going down, they lose their investments. That's what happened with FTX. So they weren't investing it in real things. They were spending it on whatever they wanted. Then we find out some $40 million from FTX was actually used to pump Democratic candidates in the midterms. We also find out that Kevin McCarthy and his Congressional Leadership Fund took close to $1 million from FTX executives to target pro-Trump Republicans in the primaries. We also know that people like Ben Sasse took donations. Five impeachment Republicans in the Senate took donations from FTX executives. So this is one of the problems. This is one of the biggest scandals of all time. Other markets, other platforms are now struggling to get by. Others are thinking about declaring bankruptcy. And these people haven't even been arrested yet. Why? Because both sides are in on it. Both sides took money from them. We can rest assured now that there's going to be nobody that wants the truth of this story known on either side of the aisle, because Kevin McCarthy's implicated in it, and the Democrats are even more implicated in it because they got $40 million. These politicians don't want people to know that they use stolen money from the American people and from investors around the world, stolen money to run political campaigns and to influence elections. This scandal should be everywhere. The fact that these people are not in jail is a slap in the face to the American people. The fact that they haven't been arrested and already charged is a slap in the face to everybody. And it exemplifies what is wrong with this country right now. Just because you are a liberal or on one side of the market doesn't mean you don't face justice. Just because you're a Republican or conservative doesn't mean you shouldn't face justice. Follow the evidence. How can we trust our government to run anymore if everything appears to be politically motivated? And it's not just necessarily along the lines of Democrat and Republican. It's becoming the big guys versus the little guys, right? The state versus everybody else. You have a government that is growing so huge and immense in size and scale and influence that it's now the American people are feeling like they have nothing left to do. And then look at how the media is covering these people. Check this out. Look at some of these articles being written, right? So this guy gave a lot of money, we saw, to, I said, liberal causes. There's one of the bets. He bet $7.3 million. FTX bet $7.3 million on their books for Trump to lose in 2024. So that's one of the ways they blew their money. Then let's look at some of these articles now. Oh, look, Sam Bankman-Fried did the financial system a failure, Reuters says. Peter Larson from Reuters says. Then we get, here's another great one. How Sam Bankman-Fried's crypto empire collapsed. They're writing these articles as though it was just an innocent collapse. It was a Ponzi scheme. He stole people's money, and they're writing these fluff articles about these people. Look at that. Before the collapse, Sam Bankman-Fried poured millions into pandemic prevention. Oh, he's not, he stole all your money, but hey, this guy was fighting for the next pandemic, to stop the next pandemic. This is insane stuff right here. And a lot of it is no doubt the fact that he was a heavy donor. You had Maxine Waters blowing him a kiss. Caroline Ellison, she's his partner in crime. Look at this. Is a math whiz who loves Harry Potter and taking big risks. Yeah, taking big risks with the billions of dollars she stole from you. So let's look at a little bit about what Jonas Ferris had to say on Tucker about this story.
Conspiracy nut. Can you summarize what you think this means?
Yeah, it's so big that the guy who was in charge of the Enron collapse, which was very complicated, lots of pieces. This is much bigger and much more absurd and ridiculous than Enron, says the guy who's now running this company, who was the former Enron head, who was brought in to fix that mess. It's very complicated. I'm not going to be very simple. You kind of touched on it. It's basically a giant affinity fraud. If you want to say who he is, he's the Bernie Madoff of crypto. He pretended to be this woke world with the donations, giving money to certain specific politicians. It was to create an image of trust, kind of like how Bernie Madoff had a foundation that gave money to hospitals and charity, so you wouldn't think it was a fraud. And then regulators who already exist, we don't need new regulators, who would have had authority over some of these preposterous yield products that they had, wouldn't do anything. In fact, he was trying to direct the regulators to his competitor, Binance, who then saw that he was doing that, and he's the one who took out this company by causing a run on the bank, knowing that this guy never really had this money left because they were looting it, gambling it away into nothing, and it wasn't really there. He started the panic and crushed his competitor. That's basically what happened.
It's just interesting. I mean, I'm not really qualified to assess some of the business portions of the story, but I can certainly assess the media portion. So he was out there constantly saying, yes, I'm making billions, but it's not for me. I'm an effective altruist. It's really for other people. I'm doing this because I'm a good person. And that seemed to deflect any real media scrutiny.
Media and regulatory scrutiny, and a lot of the customer base liked his vibes and his, so he was appealing to a lot of different people, regulators, politicians, customers, and making everybody feel like your money must be safe because why is he on the cover of all these magazines? There's a lot of faith issues in crypto because, there was a lot of frauds this year. A lot of them collapsed. He doesn't want to be that one. The best way to do this, he was his own PR agent, basically, and was very effective at it by bribing the right people, giving the right donations, creating the right image of the genius altruist. And it was all really to run a swindle, it seems like. And I don't know how much of it was just gambling with the client money that went to nothing and then some looting at the end, or how much was all looting. We're never going to, well, hopefully we'll know the full percentages when this is all done.
And that's the thing, making the right donations was the comment there, right? He was very popular amongst liberal circles. And so there was we're going to trust Sam because Sam's this great philanthropist. He's giving away all this money to charity. He's helping us fund these liberal causes. He's a great guy, not knowing that he was using the money he stole from people from his platform to do it. So he was able to escape any detection on this because he kissed butt the right people, the government, the regulators, and political allies like the Democratic Party, leaders in the Democratic Party, and even the Congressional Leadership Fund, run by Kevin McCarthy, got close to $1 million. And I don't want to hear people make excuses. Oh, it was only $750,000 or less than $1 million to Republicans. No excuse. That money was stolen money. It was used to target fellow Republicans, to slander, to smear good people like Joe Kent, who's a Green Beret, whose wife died in service. Kevin McCarthy took that money to slander his own team. Any politician, Democrat or Republican, caught up in this scandal should have to resign and should have to help pay restitution. Any PAC that took money from this scandal should immediately be disbanded and forced to pay restitution. I'm tired of people getting away with things because of who they know politically, doing whatever they want because of their political connections. We have to show that we are running a serious country in here and that the law applies to everybody. And we cannot allow them to scrape this under the rug because they don't want to talk about this scandal. They're trying to make it go away, desperately trying to make it go away. We have to demand answers. You have to call. Kevin McCarthy has no business being Speaker of the House for taking money from these people. Call your Republican representative. Tell him, how can you vote for Kevin as Speaker when he took stolen money and used it against members of your own party? The DNC should be ashamed of themselves for taking money. But none of them want the information to come to light because they know they're implicated in it. But millions have lost everything. Tom Brady, he had people like Tom Brady going out there publicly endorsing this company, making commercials for him. Brady and his wife, or soon-to-be ex-wife, invested almost their entire net wealth in FTX. Lives have been destroyed, and the fallout is still continuing. It's unacceptable that our political leaders are allowing this kid to go around and he hasn't been arrested yet. Because you can bet if it was flipped and the $40 million went to Republicans to help Donald Trump, he would already be in jail. He'd probably be locked in solitary in Guantanamo Bay. All right, before we get into the question and answers and this week's biggest L, because I got a good one today because I saw something that infuriated me regarding the vaccines, let's talk a little bit about Maricopa County, because Maricopa County is a disaster, and it just epitomizes everything that is wrong with our electoral process. And the information that has come out on Maricopa County is ridiculous. There was a court filing that was just released, and the memo alleged so here we go. On November 8th, the day of the midterm elections, 11 of the roving attorneys for the RNC, tasked with observing election processes in the Republican National Committee's election integrity program in Arizona, collectively visited nearly 52% of Maricopa County's voting centers. According to a memo sent to party officials and candidates by roving attorney Mark Sonickler and obtained by the Daily Caller, The memo alleged that 72 of those 115 vote centers, 60%, saw material problems with the tabulators not being able to tabulate ballots, resulting in substantial voter suppression. Sonicler also wrote, and then county officials said that this was dealt with within hours. We now find out that was a lie. These issues were still going on as late as 3 p.m. Sonicler wrote that the findings of the memo directly contradict the statements of county election officials that, one, printer/tabulator issues were limited to only 70 of the 223 vote centers, and that printer and tabulator problems were resolved as of 3 p.m. And the printer-tabulator issues were insignificant in their entire scheme. For instance, Maricopa County's main Twitter account said that an issue with the printers had affected an estimated 17,000 ballots, about 31% of the county's 230 voting centers. In many cases, the printer-tabulator issues persisted from the beginning of Election Day until the end of Election Day. It seems that the printer tabulation failures were 62% of the vote centers. And this is the problem Republicans are going to have. We created this mess. We talked a lot about this. We've been telling the Democrats and the people that, hey, we're going to vote on Election Day. You cannot sit here and tell me it's coincidence that on Election Day, where everybody knew Republicans were going to turn out in force, and they did turn out in force, that all of a sudden printers didn't have ink and tabulating machines weren't working. 62% in 62% of the precincts? That's not a coincidence. That is voter suppression. This was done because they knew Republican turnout was going to be huge, and they were desperate to stop Kari Lake, and they were desperate to stop Blake Masters from winning. And this story cannot go away. We have to demand answers. So the Attorney General in Arizona has sent a letter to Maricopa County and told them, you need to explain this stuff. Because how can we certify an election knowing what's going on? There have been 3 counties now in Arizona that have all signaled they are going to delay certifying the election until these issues and questions are answered. And the media doesn't want to talk about it. So why is it voter suppression when Democrats are told the polls are closed? I still can't believe a judge on Election Day wouldn't let the polls stay open an hour later. Because Democrats get that done all the time in places like Philadelphia, Atlanta, where I was from, in Connecticut, Bridgeport, New Haven. They would always go to the judge and say, listen, more people had to vote. There were long lines, there were waits, and the judges quickly sign off and they keep the polls open for 2 hours longer. Here you had actual evidence, 62% of the precincts. And the judge said, no, too bad, we're not keeping the polls open. This is a disgrace. Democrats can no longer go around the country talking about voter suppression, because this is voter suppression. It's not, you can't preach about voter suppression when you're only fighting for one side. If you really care about voter suppression, you should care that everybody is allowed to cast a ballot that wants to, regardless of party. So you can't just be a voter suppression warrior and crusader when it's only helping Democrats vote. You have to also support making sure people can vote when it's the other side. How come Stacey Abrams hasn't spoken up about this? And then the most ridiculous part about this is Katie Hobbs refused to recuse. She oversaw this entire election. So the person who wins because of all of this stuff oversaw the election. She administered this election. How can we allow an election like this to stand? This is not the time for Republicans to say, oh, well, we wash our hands from all of this and we're going to move on. No, because you need this state. I told you, go and look at the electoral map in 2024. If you take Arizona off the board and you assume it's now going blue, and you assume Pennsylvania is now lost because you lost the opportunity to control that governorship, which basically the governor was allowed to appoint the Secretary of State who oversees Pennsylvania elections. You now are in jeopardy of guaranteed to lose 2 states you need to win. If you cannot win Arizona and Pennsylvania, you must. The only way a Republican can win without Pennsylvania and Arizona, they have to sweep Georgia, Michigan, Wisconsin. And that is an incredibly tall task because only one Republican's won Michigan and Wisconsin in decades, and that was Donald Trump. And Republican Party is taking the wrong lessons from this election. And I'll use my race as an example. In CA13, John Duarte is likely to win. He's going to win by a few hundred votes. But there's danger in the California numbers. You know, everybody's congratulating the California Republican Party and a job well done. You didn't lose any of the seats that people thought were vulnerable incumbents, and you're going to pick up a seat here in CA13. But what people aren't focusing on is the fact that Latinos in California didn't vote. And this is a threat to both parties. Clearly, Latinos are sitting at home and they're dissatisfied with the Democratic Party. They say, listen, you guys are too crazy for us, because most Latinos are not in favor of gender reassignment surgery. In fact, Mexican Americans are the strongest that want to secure borders. They do not favor unchecked immigration. A lot of them are pro-life. And they're sitting at home and they're saying, listen, your policies have destroyed the economy. I just can't vote for the Democratic Party anymore. But then they look at what the Republican Party is trying to sell them, and they say, well, I don't like that either. Because Republicans didn't even have a message this midterm. And the party at the top, people like Kevin McCarthy, people like Ronna McDaniel, people like Mitch McConnell, are trying to distance the party from Trump and Trumpism and America First, when that is what brought Latinos to the GOP in the first place. There's a reason Trump does better with Latino voters than a generic Republican. It's because they love his America First message, and they trust that he's actually going to deliver on it. So Latinos stayed home. And in a district like California 13, where it's 60% Latino district, Latinos didn't show up, but Latinos didn't vote for the Democrat, but they also didn't show up to vote for the Republican. And in 2024, this is a big problem for Republicans across California because it's a presidential year. And Democrats are so much better at learning the lessons of elections, because Republicans look at election results. Republican operatives and pundits like Frank Luntz and Karl Rove, they're going to look at these results and say, look, we won in California because we distanced from Trump and we went back to a normal GOP platform. That's not true. You won because the biggest growing portion of the electorate stayed home because they didn't like either side. But Democrats are going to recognize they have a problem. They're going to look and say, holy crap, we lost even in California because we couldn't get Latinos out there. So they're going to make sure by 2024, they're going to pander to these voters again and promise them everything and then deliver nothing. But if Republicans think they're going to run on a Jeb Bush country club platform, Latinos aren't going to go to the Republican Party. They're going to go right back to the Democrats. And a seat like California 13, where in a presidential year, yes, Latino turnout's going to be bigger in a presidential year, even if both parties did nothing, because it's just going to be a much more publicized election. You might have Trump on the top of the ticket. You're going to have Biden. Even if he steps out, you might have Gavin Newsom on the top of the ticket. So Latinos are going to vote more. They always vote more in presidential years, which if Republicans don't recognize that we won because it was a white, older electorate, they're going to be in deep trouble in a state like California, which is majority Hispanic. So it's a win that Hispanics are questioning the Democratic Party, but clearly we're not giving them enough to vote Republican. And I don't trust the GOP and their political pundits because you could see how they're talking. They always Can you hear? Testing. Can you guys hear? It's on. I must have hit the thing. Can you guys hear me now? I hit the on button on my mic. All right, can you hear me now? Sorry, the other one, yeah, the microphone looks like it must have died. My bad for not charging it. So anyway, the White House is all in COVID hysteria again, pushing vaccines, telling people a bunch of lies. Anthony Fauci is out there saying the best thing you got to do is get vaccinated. Let's listen to what the White House COVIDs are actually said today. With everything we know, I cannot believe they said this.
An important part of the conversation we have in the days and weeks ahead. Because here's what we know. If folks get their updated vaccines and they get treated if they have a breakthrough infection, we can prevent essentially every COVID death in America.
He actually said that. He actually said that. This is the problem we have right now. We talked about the government. I made a statement a little while ago. Clown is right, John. I made a statement a little while ago about the fact that our government has they know that the media is going to parrot his statement. But we know that is an outright lie. This man is a government official. He's the top doctor, one of the top doctors at the White House, right? The COVID czar. And what does he do? He just lied to the American people. So in the old days, right, you would see a person like that and you would say, well, I got to trust him, right? He's going to tell me the truth. And they know there's a lot of people that still believe that. So he says that statement that he knows is a total lie. And a lot of people are going to take it at face value because why would he lie to me? Just like we said with Tony Fauci, right? In the beginning of the pandemic, the media was saying, well, Tony Fauci would never lie. He's going to tell you the truth, right? Because he's a doctor. He's a good doctor. He would never have funded gain-of-function research. We know that's all bullcrap now. Tony Fauci's getting rich off these vaccines. He likely helped fund the research that released COVID-19. And here you have, after everything we know, that statement was made today to the American people to make them get a vaccine that for right now, we don't even know the harm that this vaccine is causing. People are dying because of this vaccine, and they are still telling people, if you get it, nobody's going to die from COVID anymore. Did he not say? Did I mishear him? Let me hear it again, because I want to hear it again, because I'm pretty sure he said it.
That is a remarkable fact 2.5 years after we found this virus.
Hold on.
An important part of the conversation we have in the days and weeks ahead.
Let's see
because here's what we know. If folks get their updated vaccines and they get treated if they have a breakthrough infection, we can prevent essentially every COVID death in America.
We can prevent every COVID death in America. That is an evil lie. Evil lie. And that's the week's biggest L, because I can't believe that this is still going on. This is criminal, and people have to answer for it. I have no problem with vaccines, but right now there is clear evidence that this vaccine is causing harm to people. And if our government is going to continue to lie and tell people they need to get it without wanting to find out the truth about the harm it's causing, that's mass murder. I mean, the criminality of that, the evilness of that is mind-blowing. So before we head into the night, I'll be back next week. If you have any questions, I'd love to hear them. Bring me some questions, and if you have any before you go, I know there's a few people listening. I appreciate it, guys. If you you don't think I'm completely dumb, or you like listening to me, tell your friends. See if you can get people to subscribe to my YouTube channel. I'm trying to do things because I care about the future of this country. And okay, so here's a question: even if we praise McCarthy with a good speaker, there's still Emmer and Stefanik. Will the new speaker, assuming you'd be able to push through the agenda? So it's a tough question, because will they be able to push through the agenda? Most likely not, because we're probably going to get a compromise candidate. I think Matt Gaetz just made a tweet that I think they're going to start pushing for Jim Jordan to step up. The problem is I'm more concerned about ditching McCarthy, because you have to show the voters that you're listening to them, right? Don't you consider it a slap in the face that the red wave, we won the national popular vote by 4%, and we only picked up 10 seats, 11 seats in the House, and we couldn't win the Senate, and yet everybody keeps their job? Mitch McConnell stays Senate minority leader. Kevin McCarthy gets promoted to Speaker of the House. Ronna McDaniel, who has lost every election she's been the head of the RNC for, stays in her position. The more important thing is here, you have to show your voters that losing isn't rewarded. Only in politics and government can you fail spectacularly and get promoted. So the bigger gripe I have with McCarthy assuming the speakership role is the fact that it's a slap in the face to Republicans around the country. This man had 2 years to create a platform to run on. Instead, he spent 2 years destroying conservatives, taking stolen money and using it to wipe out Republican candidates because he was scared of America First, because he knows America First appeals to people, because he cared more about votes for speaker than he did at winning a big majority. So it's more important that Kevin goes because you have to, all three of them have to go. The McFailures have to go. All of them have to go. You're right, Darsteiner. They all have to go. That's the thing. How much longer are GOP voters going to take this? This is the thing I've been warning people about. You cannot survive as a political party right now. See, obviously right now, the demographics of this country, if Republicans, if the establishment is successful at reverting back to this country club, Jeb Bush, Mitt Romney type Republicanism, the demographics of this country already show you that the Republican Party is headed for minority status, permanent minority status. How long can a party kick its base in the face and expect them to continue showing up and giving them money, right? Think about that. Most political parties listen to their voters. They adapt their platforms accordingly. Here you have the Republican Party, which doesn't want to accept that it is now a working class populist party, that Trump forever changed the party. So you have these people at the top that are so desperate, they do not want to cater to working class Americans. So they're saying, listen, we want you to vote for us, but here's the platform we're giving you. You cannot survive as a party telling voters, this is what you get, take it or leave it. If we continue down this road, 2022 is going to be the high point of the Republican Party, because we will get wiped out even worse in 2024. So, yeah, I mean, it's more of the fact that Kevin has no business staying in power. Yeah, exactly. Turnout's going to be even worse. How are you going to motivate? You don't know how many times when I knocked on doors. Listen, people can talk to me about my results. I had $1 million spent against me. We spent hundreds of thousands. I understand that money isn't everything, but look at races like Doug Mastriano. Doug Mastriano got more votes than any Republican candidate for governor in Pennsylvania history. He was outspent by $40 million. That matters. But I was out there knocking on doors, running the best campaign I could. And the one thing that I had to deal with a lot of Republicans, they didn't want to vote for the GOP. They were so mad. There were a ton of people that told me, I am a Republican, or I used to be a Republican, but I can't stand the party anymore. And that's right, John. If we continue to do this, you're going to deject your base. Joe O'Dea decided in Colorado to kick the Republican base in the face, go full out anti-Trump, and he lost in a landslide. A landslide. They'll never learn. You cannot win without your base. These people hate the base, but they cannot win elections without the base. And they're going to learn the hard way. And unfortunately, the American people are the ones who are going to suffer, because the Democrats in power is a total, complete train wreck. The Democrats are so off the rails that they are just, it's a disaster. I mean, they want to become a globalist, socialist party. So, any other questions before we go, or anything else you guys want to discuss? I love your feedback. Like I said, I hope everybody's going to have a great Thanksgiving. I hope you all spend good time with your family. The amount of people watching, I feel, can Zeldin win realistically? Man. Problem is, you have people that are never going to oppose Ronna McDaniel. So you're going to have to get enough hard nose to where Ronna can't get the necessary votes. And I just don't think I see that happening. And let me tell you, people think I don't criticize Trump. I'm glad you asked me this question before we go. And John, I'll get back to California. But I'm glad you asked me this, because, Ronna is entrenched because Trump the last thing we heard from Trump was that he supported her. Same thing with Kevin McCarthy. Donald Trump, his biggest flaw, and it's a huge flaw because it sank him during his first 4 years, was trusting the wrong people. Trump is a businessman. When you are the CEO of a company, when you tell your employees to do something or people work below you, you know that they're going to do it. They want to keep their jobs. They're loyal to you. Politics isn't that way. These are conniving, self-serving, egotistical, slimy people. They kiss Trump's butt, but behind the scenes, they're working behind him. Kevin McCarthy does not like Donald Trump. Kevin's entire staff hates Donald Trump. Kevin is actively recruiting Ron DeSantis to run. Trump needs to see that Kevin's money means nothing. What good is it if Kevin raises tens of millions of dollars? First of all, he's using Trump to raise this money. Kevin wouldn't be raising any of this money without Donald Trump. He's using that, and then he uses that money to hurt Trump. Trump needs to step up and say, listen, I've learned my lesson, because I have concerns that he hasn't. He cannot stick with these people. So the bigger thing is the fact that Trump's still on the record. We know for a fact he hasn't come out and changed his position on Ronna, Mitch. Oh, well, he has on Mitch McConnell, but he hasn't on Ronna and he hasn't on Kevin. So until Trump is willing to publicly break from those two, it's going to be really hard. And I hope the president breaks from them. It's going to re-energize his base. Sticking with them actually is going to hurt him more. Because people are going to say, wait a minute, have you learned your lesson? Because that was the biggest problem during your 4 years. You listened to the wrong people. You hired the wrong people based on information and advice from snakes. Yeah, there are people that talk to Trump. And I know people tell him this. But there are, unfortunately, one or two people that have Trump's ear that he listens to more than anyone. And one of them helped screw me in my race here. So I don't want to throw out the names yet, but you probably know him from California. What can we fix California GOP? Listen, it's tough because that's another thing with California GOP. What you have to do is, yeah, John, you know what I'm talking about. His own buddy there, basically a guy, he told him not to help me for a guy he knows hates Donald Trump. That's the kind of advice Trump's taking from people. A guy who will vote, if Trump ever won again, the person who beat me and is likely to win would vote to, if Kevin McCarthy gave John the green light, he would vote to impeach Donald Trump. And Devin knew that. And that's why it's disgusting that he did what he did in my race. There was a lot of stuff behind the scenes. So I know people want to get slack on me. Yeah, well, we had to work really hard to make sure that didn't happen. John, let me tell you that. So, but in California, you kind of have to do the same thing. You have to show the party at the top they're not listening. And listen, I don't want Republicans to lose, but at some point we have to say, listen, I'm not voting for your garbage. Don't give money to candidates. One of the biggest things you can do to help get these parties give the message. I just saw things. So Rick Scott sent out emails fundraising supposedly for Herschel Walker in the Georgia runoff. So you go and you click the email and you go to pay, and 98% of the donation goes to Rick Scott and the NRSC. So the biggest thing to cut the power of party leaders is do not donate to the RNC, do not donate to the Cal GOP, do not donate on Win Red. Give your money directly to candidates you support. Because, guys, I can't stress this enough. I had 20-something mailers used against me, television ads. It would have cost me $50,000 to send out one mailer. We worked our butts off, and I'm damn proud of what we accomplished with the little money we had. But money matters. Money matters. There's a reason these parties work so hard to raise so much money. And I think you saw how much money matters because Republicans were outspent in these key races, like because of Mitch McConnell in Arizona and places like that. So give money to the candidates. I'll leave you with this. I hope you guys have a great Thanksgiving. Enjoy it. Watch some football. Spend time with your families. I'll see you next week. I'm sure there'll be some crazy stuff going on. I want to talk a little bit more about Ukraine next week. But you guys have a good one. I appreciate you spending time with me. Thank you very much.
What's the song that is played where everybody is on the chair, everybody going to my mind's going blank now. What's happening? I can't remember.